After putting out the call last week at the Toronto International Film Festival on eTalk, Viola Davis is celebrating that people showed up to see The Woman King this past weekend, writing on Instagram, "Thank you all for making The Woman King the #1 movie in America." But now Viola, who is also a producer on the movie, is having to answer the call to boycott The Woman King on Twitter because of historical inaccuracies. Speaking with Variety yesterday, Viola starts by saying, "You're not going to win an argument on Twitter. We entered the story where the kingdom was in flux, at a crossroads. They were looking to find some way to keep their civilization and kingdom alive. It wasn't until the late 1800s that they were decimated. Most of the story is fictionalized. It has to be." Another producer and Viola's husband, Julius Tennant, says The Woman King is edutainment, explaining, "It's history, but we have to take license. We have to entertain people. If we just told a history lesson, which we very well could have, that would be a documentary. Unfortunately, people wouldn't be in the theaters doing the same thing we saw this weekend. If people want to learn more, they can investigate more." Viola says what's more important than analyzing the historical accuracy of the film is analyzing the reaction it's getting from black women. People are really being emotionally shifted. I saw a TikTok video today of women in a bathroom of an AMC theater. I don't think they knew each other. They were all and ruminating. That cannot be quantified by words. It's an undeniable, powerful story. We're in an industry that doesn't see the power black women have at the global box office.
Well, power to the people.
Oh, Mr. Tyrone. I just gotta get freaky for you because you love the hoes.
I don't care if they don't like me. I came here to stunt. Yeah. I don't care if they don't.
What's good, everybody? If you're first time viewing my content or this video, make sure you like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Shout out to Miss Viola Davis and The Woman King. I watched that yesterday, and it was an amazing movie that I watched. I give it an 8 out of 10, and I will post like a snippet, a sneak peek of basically my perception on The Woman King, and I'm gonna hit up a little bit on what I talked about in my podcast episode. The podcast episode is out, so make sure you go on Spotify at the Omnius Podcast and check that out. Nonetheless, a lot of people have been talking about boycotting the Woman King movie because of a couple of things. One, because they feel like because Hollywood is doing it, that it's a romanticized version of what has happened during the slave trade. And two, because the movie is being told and narrated by a non-black person. Neither of these things concern me. The reason why is because this movie is based upon historical events. What does that mean, Tyrone? Exactly what it means. Exactly what it says. It's based upon historical events. It's not a documentary. All right. As somebody who went to school for film, if you really go to watch a movie that says it's based upon historical events for something that has historically happened, I don't think you're that bright. Any movie that you see that says based upon historical events, the scenario and the timing and maybe like the background and what's going on is historical. There's some historical context to that, but that does not mean that what you're seeing on screen actually happened. It's the same thing with the Malcolm X movie, Jackie Robinson, Selma with Martin Luther King. These are based upon historical events, but that does not mean that these things that you're seeing on screen, that does not mean what you're seeing on screen actually happened. So, Viola Davis and Viola Davis' husband has some things to say concerning the whole scenario at hand, basically saying the same thing I said, that if you want to see something with actual historical context, clear cut and direct, then go watch a documentary. And I say that in my YouTube video as well, even before I even knew that they said the same thing, and I said the same thing as well. You can't expect, that you're going to get a well, concise and direct and valid, historical story in these type of movies. There has to be some drama. There has to be some romanticism. There has to be some form of entertainment in order for you to be captivated in the movie. Otherwise, you just want a documentary.
Let me help you stop spreading more fake news and understand the truth. There's a lot of misinformation about the Woman King and the history behind it that needs to be shut down. Fake news like the movie ignores, minimizes, and even glorifies slavery. People are also grossly depicting the Agoji warriors as unattractive, manly murderers. However, listening to one quick Google search of the Woman King's director talking about the research she and historians did for the film would clear things up. But if you don't trust her or the sources used to develop the story, why not check out National Geographic's feature on them? Or read a few scholarly articles? Stop, I'll tell you why that's a waste of time and you're better off trusting the film. You will find a lot of information that substantiates the claim that they were 6-foot, heavy-bodied, beast-like women. Women who did heinous things like dug holes and filled them with blood. And you will find stories that confirm that their tribes sold their people for resources and even killed them routinely. But before you judge the Dahomey Kingdom and the ill legacy this film honors, ask yourself one important question. Who wrote history? Who wrote their history? Almost everything published about the Ogoji warriors was written from the perspective of the colonizer, and their goal wasn't to portray black people as anything other than savages. Their goal was to leave a written record of inaccuracies that affirmed their cognitive dissonance. So yes, the Ogoji tribe did contribute to the slave trade, but you have to acknowledge that they were also a group of minorities misled and abused by racists. Who are you to judge their efforts to survive? And yes, the Ogoji women were strong in mind and body, but hardly beast-like. That myth is also a gross exaggeration used to dispel the beauty of a society that valued women in every aspect. And yes, the Ogoji often sacrificed criminals within their community, sometimes citizens, in the name of their kings and their god. Who are you to shun their spiritual practices and way of life? Seems like a colonizer mentality to me. If you watch The Woman King expecting to see the perspective of people who perpetuated lies and left a legacy of pain, you'll be disappointed. Even worse, you'll continue to spread false narratives. The Woman King is, however, historically backed. So tell the naysayers that Gina Prince Bythewood and her team thoroughly reviewed many publications about the West African kingdom of Dahomey in search of the truth. And the most informative resource that shaped the film and the script were journals written by missionaries who had first-hand experience observing this kingdom. And they painted a very different story. The story you get to watch in theaters about African people who valued equality, unity, and God, African people who were rich, strong, and beautiful, African people who found ways to survive their circumstances, but weren't unwilling to see the error of some of their choices. The Ogoji warriors, the Dahomey kingdom, deserve to be respected and not tainted with more lies. Their history was written by the colonizer, but the truth is honored through the Woman King.
So yes, they use historical figures, historical characters to tell a story. They do the same thing in the Bible. There are some historical figures in the Bible and they use them to tell a story. They do the same thing in Marvel. They do the same thing in DC. Okay, they do the same thing in television shows. They will use celebrities, historical figures, whoever they may be, to tell a story. That's what they did here. So if you don't like that, you ain't got to watch it. But what I don't like is for people to be closed-minded or narrow-minded and not, go into the movie, looking at certain perceptions of the movie or what the clear-cut message may be for you personally. And I know I got a personal message from that as well, and I'll talk about that in my podcast episode, so check it out. But I like the movie personally. I like the way that it was put together. I like the cinematography and everything behind it. Reason why, even with her being a non-black woman directing and, writing this story, the reason why it doesn't bother me is because as long as you're telling the story correctly, as long as you're directing and you have the right people around you to get the type of message and portrayal on screen, and we didn't get no fake languages or fake accents or some fake dances. Everything was authentic. The battle cries and the chants and the dances and the instruments and the weapons and the attire, everything was put together well, coming from me. All right. But for some reason, I talk about my rating and how I personally feel about this movie. Somehow people are questioning me on my consciousness. They're questioning me on where do I stand. Somebody asked me, I switched up. Tyrone, what happened? Beyond me. But if you want to watch the movie, I highly recommend that you watch the movie just so you can have your own personal, thoughts and opinions on it. I don't want you, one thing for sure, do not go into the movie expecting something or go into the movie prejudging the movie, because you're not going to get the message of the movie. Go in there with an open mind. Okay? So that's how I feel about this particular movie. And that's how I feel about this whole scenario, because Viola Davis has some words for them. But share your thoughts concerning the whole matters at hand. How do you feel about this movie? How do you feel about, somebody non-black telling our stories, whatever that means, or just telling African narratives and so on and so forth? Let me know how you feel about that personally in the comment section below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, share this video with other people. Till next time, I'm Tyrone. I am
Long as I sucker.